All right, so welcome to this session of Introduction to Foundation Directory Online Essential. My name is Sarah. I'm Research Coordinator here for the Forefront Library. We'll just be going over kind of this database and how you can access it and how it will be helpful to you. All right, first, we'll talk a little bit about Forefront as an organization. For anyone who is not super familiar, we are a statewide membership association for nonprofits, grant makers, advisors, other people related to the sector. We are one of very few organizations in the country who does all of those together. A lot of places you will find just associations for nonprofits or for foundations. It's very rare to find both. So we try to provide education, like workshops of these, advocacy through some of our policy, promotion, leadership, other kinds of collective action or collaboration around issues that are important both to our member organizations and to the nonprofit sector as a whole. Now, the library plays into this primarily by supporting the education and research pieces of this. We are a special library, which means our collection is specialized. We, of course, are focused on nonprofit resources and things related to that. We are also part of the Funding Information Network through Candid. Some of you may be familiar with their previous name of Foundation Center. They are the ones who created the Foundation Directory Online database in all of its versions. So as part of being part of their network, we provide access to those things as well as trainings related to some of those issues as well. You can also find a lot of things on their website. If you're just looking for stuff that you can access and get into on your own, learning.candid.org is right there. They have a few sample documents if you want to see things related to a full grant proposal, as well as other workshops and things. For some things, you will need to create a free login on that website in order to see things, and some of their trainings are fee-based, but others are free. Just go explore that, have fun. For us here in the library at Forefront, we are online only at this time still, so unfortunately I cannot invite you to come visit us. Eventually, that will probably be an option again. We moved since anyone was able to last visit us physically, so our address that we will definitely want people to visit at some point in the future. We're at the Fabric Impact House at 200 West Madison downtown in Chicago. And eventually we will be able to bring people into those digs. But at the moment, we are online only. That's part of why we're talking about this database, is because it is one that we can let people have login information for from home, whereas the professional version of the database is something that is not available for any kind of remote login. Right. So at the end of this course, you should know what this database is, how to search it, basically, how to evaluate what your results are in that, how to access it, because there are a couple of options there, and how to get help if you need more kind of direction afterwards. So a few technical details for anybody. Oh, right. I had, for this particular version of this, created a poll. So, oh no. Zoe, can you check to see if you can access the poll? It's telling me I'm logged in from another device. So I think us being logged in twice is giving it a little bit of a hiccup. So will you check to see if you can access polls from your side? If you can't, that's fine. I'll just ask people to share information in the chat. Basically, it was just going to ask.
I think I launched it.
Excellent. All right, so just a simple poll there, asking people how familiar you are with Foundation Directory Online as a database. So if you can give us that, we'll give everybody a moment. Hopefully that really isn't going to be burdensome as a response. Zoe, you can close that, I guess, whenever it looks like everybody has finished taking it. So I, of course, at the moment can't see it at all. So
I shared the results. So it looks like we are tied between never used it before and have used it a few times but want a refresher at 43%. And then we have 14% with familiar with FDO Professional and want to know how essential differs, and we have nobody in the other category.
All right, so, okay, good to know. So most people are, more or less new to this, so that is fine. That is perfect for an introduction course. So just a few bits of information about the database itself. So a lot of these are things that it shares with the professional version, since they are drawing on the same bank of information. So they include detailed profiles of funders that include 990s, maps of their past giving, frequently application or other kinds of mission information for the organization. There are hundreds of thousands of profiles in there. It is updated on an ongoing basis. Now, about that currency, while the pieces of the database get updated all of the time, that does not mean that every single profile is updated every single day. No one has the staff for that sort of thing, for that many profiles, but it does mean that it is on an ongoing sort of basis. Each profile has a last updated date on it. So when I do a little hands-on, show you what it looks like thing, we can take a look at that just to show you what that looks like. So you can see what that really kind of means for something to be updated there. Right, so people are frequently curious about where the information comes from. There are a lot of different places. The website there at the bottom actually goes into it more in depth. So if you're really curious, or if you're a bit of a data specialist, you can jump into that and look at their sources in more detail. But basically, anywhere that it's publicly available to pull information about funders is a potential resource for the information that goes into these profiles. So tax, IRS tax documents like the 990, press releases, especially recently. Candid has really tried in the last year to make a big push for more currency on things, because relying on things like 990s means there is this huge lag in getting information because of when people file taxes, the kinds of extensions that are possible for organizations, and so on, where that means that, if you're looking for the most current information there, you're going to be looking, probably 2 years at least back for a lot of things if you're relying on those sorts of documents. So they've really tried to push into, pulling things from websites for foundations that have those, encouraging foundations to claim and update their own profiles. If anyone, I don't think anyone was, but if anyone on the call is part of a foundation, there's a very easy process for kind of hooking up with their website directly, where you can actually e-report your grants information on, like a quarterly or whatever kind of regular basis works for you, rather than it all having that kind of lag in all of the bureaucratic process. All right, so that is where everything kind of comes from and what it's pulling to put it together in the profile. So if you are searching it, of course, the first thing to think about is to think about your need, what it is you're looking for, and have that all kind of laid out very succinctly. This is kind of developing that hook. So who is your organization serving? Or who is this project serving if you're looking for a smaller piece of things? Where are the people you're serving, and what exactly are you doing for them? How are you changing things? What is the outcome you're going to achieve? When you kind of get those pieces together, when you know what it is you're looking for, when you're really kind of comfortable with the whole know thyself part first, you can look at the database and kind of do this search for funding or for information about funders. We look at it as kind of project-based here because that's often the easiest to describe. You can also look for general support. In that case, you are usually describing the mission of your organization as a whole, rather than a specific project. But many of the same kinds of things when you're thinking about terms and what to put into a database still apply. So like I said, I'll do a hands-on demo at the end of this, but we'll look through some of these screenshots now to just talk about the pieces of it. So if anyone has used FDO, but it's been a few years, This might look very different to you. Candid did a big overhaul a few years back that drastically changed what their entire interface looked like. So now this is kind of the initial box that you see when you go to the Foundation Directory Online Database. You can attempt to use it just like you would Google, where you would put in, your keywords there, and it will try to basically interpret those. Now, this can have mixed results, just because it is a computer algorithm attempting to translate your natural language into its own set of terms, because all of the information in the database is indexed with a particular set of terms. In fact, I will put into the chat a web address. So this website actually lists all of the terms that are officially in the database, the taxonomy.candid.org. If you look at that, it has all of the terms that it uses to talk about all the information. That can help you when you're searching, because you can use the words that the database knows, which can be very useful there. So like I said, you can just try typing in a general search and seeing what results for you. But we generally recommend that you go to this advanced search part first, because then you will see something more like this. You get to have kind of fun with boxes at this point. Now, you do not have to fill in all of the boxes. You'll note that there are 3 of them filled in this particular search right here. And that is fine. You can fill in as few of them or as many of them as you wish to just try to describe the research you are, the project or the mission that you are focused on. So in talking about slightly odd terms and what the database uses versus what you might be used to, I don't know how legible it is on anyone else's screen, but the subject area that is showing here is called out of school learning. And that is a term for basically all kinds of after school programs or summer programs or anything like that. Excuse me just a moment. I'm going to mute myself just briefly because I need to cough. Okay, sorry about that. Winter, fall allergies. I'm sure people are very familiar with those. Anyway, so out of school learning there, that's after school programs, it's, summer programs, anything that isn't taking place inside of school. So lots of people do projects that are related to that sort of thing, but you might not know or be used to the term out of school learning. So that is one to think of. So if you weren't familiar with that term, that might not be one that you would think of to try to use. And that's why I kind of share that taxonomy address, because then you can kind of browse through what terms are available and what they mean, because there's the definitions there. So subject area is what you're doing. This can be, as I said, project. It can be the mission related term, but it is kind of what you're working on, the broad area, whether you're theater based, whether you're education based, anything like that kind of topic. Geographic focus is where you are doing your work. This is not necessarily where you are physically located. If you're in Chicago, but you do work, in other counties, you can give a broader focus. You can search for the state. You can, within Chicago itself, you can actually try to search some of the townships or neighborhoods within it. Again, not everything gets indexed to that granular level, so you might be leaving out relevant results, but that is certainly something that you can try if you're working in a very small area. Now, if any of you primarily do work outside Chicago, I will apologize for the fact that searching Illinois will weight results toward people working in Chicago just by kind of a numbers game. We have asked for, but it has never been incorporated as of yet, a way to filter out specific areas. We hope for the day that they will tell us that there is a way to search Illinois, but not Chicago for the geographic focus box. But as of yet, that is not an option. So geographic focus is where you're doing your work. Again, you can go small or you can go broad. Another reason to go broader than your specific area might just be to look for funders who say they want to fund in your area but haven't yet. If you're in, a northwestern county in Illinois, and you search Illinois as a geographic focus, and you come across somebody who says they're a statewide funder, but they've never funded in your part of the state, that can be part of the narrative when you make a proposal or a letter of interest to them on, saying, hey, this is an opportunity to, expand or meet your vision, your mission for your foundation, is to incorporate things that are in our area. So that can be something that can even be kind of beneficial, but it is just something to kind of play around with as you search. Population served. If you are working with a particular group of people, like here, chose women and girls, there are many other choices there. So if you do a lot of different work with one particular group, like if you work with veterans and provide a number of services for veterans, you might use population served and leave, say, subject area blank because you're doing a lot of different things. Whereas if you do a specific kind of program, like if you're doing, a backpack program and you're doing something that's like out of school learning, you probably don't have to do population served if you're working with all children, just because it's kind of implied by your subject area. So you can kind of play around with those as well. Again, since things get indexed from government information a lot of times, details can often be kind of scant. So filling in more and more boxes can often leave out results that would actually be applicable, that just didn't get indexed in all of these various ways because there wasn't enough information available in, say, the grant details that have been shared. So a lot of times you can kind of, read between the lines, as long as it's not a funder profile that says they specifically don't work with the group or the area that you're talking about. So the other kinds of boxes on there we'll go over fairly quickly because none of them are really as frequently important as kind of those top three. Organization name. If you are looking for information on a particular funder, if you have like a list, you can look them up individually by name. So if you wanted to look up, the McCormick Foundation or Chicago Community Trust, you can put in their name specifically to look at them. Location is where a funder is located. So if you specifically wanted to look for independent foundations that are located in Cook County, you could use location because you want to know where they are located. That is opposed to geographic focus, which is where your work or where the work that's being funded is being done. Who's who is like organization name, but for people. So if you say had been at a networking event and met someone who you knew was associated with the foundation, but maybe you didn't quite remember the foundation name or how to spell it, but you remember their name, you can try looking them up and finding their foundation that way. That can often be a little trickier just because there are a lot of people with very similar names in the world. So, and of course, not everyone who works for a foundation is going to be listed as associated with them. So it can again be a bit hit or miss, but it is a way to try to do those sorts of searches as well. Then in the darker gray area are the fields that are frequently used after you've already done one search. So if you've done kind of a broad search there, these can be the ones where you see that you've gotten way too many results and need to narrow things down. That's what a lot of these fields and needs, the darker gray, are best used for, like support strategy. While subject area is kind of broadly what are you doing? What does your organization do? What is this project about? Support strategy is often how is it being done, or what is the particular kind of method that you're looking for support through. So if you're looking specifically at a capital campaign, or if you're looking specifically at building stuff that is required for your project, you can add those caveats basically through support strategy. You can also look specifically at general funding through that. So those are kind of things that are in the support strategy category. Transaction type and organization type are not very regularly used. Transaction type, just because it's frequently very hard to find things that were indexed to that degree. So unless you're specifically looking at things like in-kind gifts, perhaps, it is frequently not going to be a very fruitful sort of search, but you can certainly try to look through things with it. It has PRIs and some of those other types. Odds or the less usual sorts of transaction types are listed there as well. Organization type is again the type of organization as it kind of states there. So again, if you were doing that location search and you wanted to look for independent foundations in Cook County, location of Cook County, and then under organization type, you could specifically say you wanted to look at company sponsored foundations or independent foundations or whoever. If you just wanted to pull that kind of list on more of a landscape view. Then the bottom row from right to left, EIN, that's the very specific number. It's basically organization name, but unique. So if you have an EIN, you can look it up that way to see if the organization's in the database. Keyword. Keyword is kind of an odd box. You can use it if there is something unusual about your work that does not fit into one of the other boxes. If you were doing something that was, very targeted and it didn't really seem to fit in anything else, put it there to see what comes up. But since this is looking for things that aren't the official index terms, it can be a little wonky as a search term itself. For instance, one of the best searches I have seen done with it was a trainer used it to search the word cheese. And in the results, it did bring up a number of results, but when you looked at the grants that were associated with it, one of the top, largest amount grants had been in the area of transportation. And when you looked at the details, it was because it was specifically for the upkeep and maintenance of a highway that was named after someone whose last name was Cheese. So be careful with your keywords. They can often have meanings that you were not intending. But sometimes they are useful for seeing what grants, so seeing, what can pop up for those sorts of things. Years, if you're looking for things that have been done recently, you can mess with the years slider. So if you want to make sure that it has been a recent priority for a foundation, you can make sure you're looking at only the last several years. As I mentioned at kind of the top of this, though, there is a lag on getting a lot of official data for pulling things from 990s, because of course they have to be filed, there can be extensions, the IRS has to process them, the IRS has to release them, Candid then has to get a hold of them and they have to get them uploaded and indexed. So you can kind of see why that whole train takes a while. So generally, if you're looking for current information in there, I say give it at least at this point 3 years, because the IRS on their website mentions they have a huge delay they're working through, but they're more behind than usual on processing things. So give it at least a few years. 5 is often a good round number for looking at kind of recent things. But just, be mindful of how that can play out. Then grant amount. If you're looking for grants of a specific size, so if you're looking for things where you really need grants of at least $10,000, you can click on the numbers there and change them what you want. If you have a specific range you're looking at, or if you just have a specific floor or ceiling that you need to add in. All right. So once you make all of your little searches there, you will get something that comes out looking like this. So if you have used Foundation Directory Online Professional at the Forefront Library or elsewhere, you will note that those 2 middle columns are ones that you can see in the professional version, but you do not get information for an essential. That is basically the biggest difference between the two, is that availability of that particular information. However, you do still get the grant maker profiles. So you'll see here, it tells you how many there are. Then it gives you a tiny bit of information about each one. Name, city, assets, total giving, which is the amount pulled from their last 990 on file within this database, and amount funded, which is how much they have given to the subject you were searching by those terms. So this is the result from my previous search up there. So out of school learning for women and girls in Chicago. This is what came up for those numbers there. All right, so once you have those results and you are looking through them, looking at the profiles and whatnot, you're going to want to try to evaluate things. Since we're talking about the essential version where you will be creating kind of your own day pass account, this does mean that they have a tool built into the database that you can also use to kind of walk through that. It is not a tool I am familiar with, so I unfortunately can't give you a lot of pointers about it, but it is something that will pop up as soon as you start looking at foundation profiles. So it is one where you can actually go through and it'll ask you questions and you'll be able to kind of evaluate them through its tool if you wish. But you can also do this, of course, on your own. And more broadly, things to look for when you're evaluating these prospects are looking at stuff like, do I meet the funder's requirements? Most of the profiles have a section about that, about their application and process. So you can see, if they say they specifically don't fund in a particular area or a particular thing. Is my mission or project tool a priority for this funder? I mentioned that there are maps about their grant giving for each of these profiles. So you can kind of see the top 10 areas they fund in. So you can see whether or not what you're doing is within kind of their highest set of priorities, or if it's something that's more an occasional give for them. And of course, do you know anyone associated with the funder? Sometimes foundations have staff that are listed on their profile, so that can be one where you can look through those names, or you can try to look up the foundation through other means just to see who is associated with it, to see if you or your board or anyone else at your organization has any kind of connections to this funder, because that is often the best way to do the whole introduction sort of business. All right, so I've mentioned the maps a couple of times. Here's what one of them looks like. I feel this is probably better looked at through the database itself. But this is kind of what the top of the profile looks like. So you would get the name of an organization, their location, their website if they have one, and then these links that are just to information further down the profile. Then you would get these maps. So like I said, if you're looking for whether or not it's a priority for them, you can see here the kind of broad categories. I'm sure you can't actually read the text on this, but these have the kind of top level categories like arts and culture or education, instead of having it broken down into the smaller subgroups. But you can still kind of see here whether or not, out of school learning as part of education is one of their actual top priorities there, since education is actually that very top bar on this particular profile. So you can kind of see how your subject area in general is prioritized by the organization, or has been over the last few years. You can see where they have given recently. The darker a state is on this map, the more the more dollars they have given to that particular area. So you'll see here, Lloyd Fry tends to give pretty much in Illinois, and then to some extent in New York and a couple of other places. But Illinois is by far the darkest state on that map. And then the size of their grants. So you can kind of see what size grants they tend to give. If they give small grants, if they give larger ones, and if this kind of fits with what you were looking for. Okay, next section is the about the funder, where we'll talk about their mission. It can talk about their specific program areas, it can talk about their background. It gives you kind of a broad overview of the organization. In this section, I've mentioned a couple of times the giving limitations or applications information section. So in this, it will talk about what is required, if they have specific deadlines they're listing here. Sometimes it might just say, see our website. I know I've seen a few times, take our pre-application checklist, but it might have, that they do stuff at board meetings, or it might have specific deadlines. It might say that they want to see a letter of intent or inquiry. It might tell you that they want to, have a call first, or general kind of information like that. And it'll also have the limitations, so that you'll see, where it says that they tend to want to give or not give to. Now, sometimes you'll be able to note that this information is a very loose guideline for them. If you've looked at the maps up there and you see that there are lots of states that have, some shading to them. So them saying they give primarily in Chicago is probably not entirely accurate, because they seem to do a fair amount of giving in other states. So you can kind of, judge a little bit of leeway on how much, how tightly they keep some of these rules that are in their limitation section by looking at the other areas of the profile, like those maps. Then it'll tell you what they absolutely don't do. Like This one says that they don't give any support for medical research, for religious purposes, or to government bodies. Some of those are pretty common sorts of limitations you can see. Sometimes you'll see very specific limitations, tickets to events comes up occasionally where you kind of wonder how often they got asked about that before they put it in this rule box. But it's always good to look here, especially if they say they actually do not do specifically the thing you were looking for. Even if the subject area was a good fit, it's probably best to judge them as being kind of a weak fit overall. Right. I mentioned the who's who as part of the search. This is where you would see those names, what their kind of position is. Occasionally, you will see a LinkedIn icon because there is a tie-in between the two websites for that. So if you see that, you are able to click it and get directed to their LinkedIn profile, which can also give you some idea of whether or not you have any connections in common. So that's a lot of kind of what the profile looks like. You can, of course, save those. That is less important to go over really when we're talking about logging in for things for yourself. Now, if you are looking for someone specific, I mentioned it when we were looking at the initial search box, but here it just kind of goes into more detail that you can see that from the very beginning, that Google-esque search box. You can actually click over here and have it directly highlight the organization name box for you so that you can start typing that information in. As soon as you start typing, it will start suggesting foundations that match what you've typed in. So you can kind of look for what the right one is to click on to search. You can also, of course, use this to do the search by a person, where it will then highlight the specific who's who field, and you can type in a name and click the one that you believe it is. You can also see here how that can be a little confusing because there are just, what's showing here, 3 different results for Bill Gates, which may or may not all lead to the same information. So you'll see a listing for a Bill Gates, a listing for a William Bill Gates III, and the Bill Gates Foundation. So you may need to pick multiple results and see kind of which one actually ends up being what you were looking for, or it may just be something where you need to find more information in order to do that search. Those are kind of the various ways to search the Foundation Directory Online Essential database. Now, getting access to it. So you can log into this from basically anywhere once you have your DayPass account set up. The simplest way to do that is to email us for the login information because it is something where we have to send you, frankly, one of the ugliest links I have ever seen. So, so if you email us, and I've put our email address there in the chat, if you email us saying you want access to FDO Essential, Foundation Directory Online Essential, however you want to talk about the database, we will send you a link that will prompt you to start creating your DayPass account. Now, I keep saying DayPass account because that is how the access currently works for FDO Essential. When you click that link that we can send you, it will ask you to basically put in an email. It will then send you an activation link to that email address. When you go into your email to look for the activation and you click that one, it will verify the account and will also start the countdown of your first 24 hours. So when you are looking to set up your account, make sure that you are going to be doing this at a time when you're actually wanting to search it. You don't want to set up this username and it be, you have like 15 minutes to set that up and then you'll do it later because it will start counting down for you pretty much automatically. That is not a thing that a human being has a lot of control over there. So the kind of steps to it are you email us for the link, we send you the link to create your account. When you visit that link, you'll put in your own email address or whatever email address you're wanting to use to log in to FDO Essential. Once you do that, Candid, or FDO Essential, will send you an activation email. This should show up within half an hour because that is the time frame in which the activation link inside it will expire. So it should show up pretty shortly after you send your email to them. If it does not, make sure, of course, to check your junk mail. You can, try typing again just in case there was, in case you were on a tablet and it didn't read all of your typing correctly. But I have had one or two people where there's occasionally an email address that the database just doesn't seem to believe exists. So if you have tried a couple of times and you're spelling it correct, and you have not seen your activation email in a fairly short amount of time, try a different email. That has actually been the thing that worked for at least 3 people I have talked to. So hopefully it would not affect you. It has not affected the vast majority of people, but occasionally there's just an email address that this database has some kind of personal grudge against. So be aware that is a potential issue there. But those are the indie steps there. You email us, we send you the creation link. You go into that, you put in the email address you want to use, you check that email account to look for the activation. You will click that activation and you will be logged into the database and you will start seeing a 24-hour countdown timer on the website. Once that 24-hour clock runs out, it will be 30 days and then you can log in again. That's why I'm calling it a day pass thing, because you have basically a pass for a day once a month. So that is how they are currently handling the access to it. That is going to be the model, at least for the next few months. They have not announced whether or not they're continuing this into the new year. So we will see how that plays out. It probably depends on a lot of other kinds of factors about how everything else is working and opening up at that point. But for right now, that is how access to FDO Central works. So once you have that information, you can do your work wherever you wish. If you need additional assistance, Foundation Directory Online has their own quick guide. If you want to take a screenshot of this to save, you certainly can. Or I can also send out the slides to attendants if people want to see these slides. I can definitely mention that. But like I said, Foundation Directory Online has their own quick guide. Candid has its the people who make Foundation Directory Online have a YouTube channel, and we at Forefront have our own series of videos, which includes a recording of a previous version of this this webinar, as well as some of our other webinars as well, that you can all find on our YouTube channel as well. All right, and so if anyone has any questions, please put them into the chat, and I will switch my sharing just so that I can show you the database very quickly. All right, so hopefully everyone is now seeing FDO Essential. This is the login screen, so you should recognize that screenshot of the box right here in the middle. So as I said, you can try typing in something like this, like you would with Google, and seeing what it does. You'll note here that it added a whole bunch of things. So many things. I don't know why I thought all of these things were appropriate when I wrote after-school programs for girls in Chicago. Well, it narrowed things down where it gave us absolutely no results. That is why we generally recommend going to that advanced search, just because that can be a very different sort of thing. There was a question about cost. I will admit I never keep track of what this costs for a personal subscription. I know Candid has personal subscriptions, both for the Essential and for the Professional as well. Now, of course, if you are working with a Forefront member organization, if your nonprofit is a member of Forefront, you can email us directly here in the library and we can search the professional version and send you results for you. That is part of membership. That's one of the benefits of it. I believe, if I remember correctly, the FDO sort of, oh, hey, someone else has actually put in the link for it. Great. Thank you, Elena. So yes, they have, except it's one of those links where it redirects to the actual database if you're a subscriber. That's why I always have trouble with it, is because if I click that link, it just takes me to FDO Professional because we're already a subscriber. So I can't actually use that link here. But for anyone who is not, please feel free to go to that link and see the information about their subscription prices. So again, with kind of this quick search, you can see all of the various boxes. A lot of these are drop-down menus. Subject area is where you can kind of browse what it is you're looking for. We'll just do kind of that same search. So as I said, you can start with a very narrow sort of thing where you're going into these very specific categories, or you can start broad. Just depends a little bit on how you prefer searching. Then we pick our geographic focus where we are doing our work. And again, you can see population served is a drop-down menu. Geographic focus isn't, just because there are far too many locations that are in the database. So that one you do have to just start typing where it is you are located. All right, so that had been the search I had done originally. As I mentioned, you can fill in as many or as few boxes of these as kind of just describe what it is you are looking for. You do not have to fill in all of them by any stretch. That will usually actually confuse the database if you try to put something in all of them. Just, do a kind of a few, give it kind of those, high level sorts of descriptor words. So then when we search, again, as mentioned, since it's essential, you don't get that information there. Okay, apparently there have been 3 more organizations that have been added to the results since I made those screenshots for the slideshow presentation. So you can see these here. You can see the list of grant makers. You can see 990 if you wanted to go into those yourself. If we go into the view for the foundations, give it a moment, apparently. It's never good to have to rely on your internet connection, apparently, when you're trying to show something. Right, so once we get in there, that'll have a longer list of this. You'll see that this is just the kind of first 5 results. Right, so when we go in here, you can see up to 100 results at once on these sorts of pages. Again, it gives you a bit of information about the organization. You can save this view if you just want this kind of summary. You can save those all together. You can save it as a list, as a PDF where you wanted to do the list. This saves that longer view when we scroll through all of those various screenshots talking about the maps and the application info and whatnot. That's the profile, and you can only save 10 of those at a time. You can do that multiple times if you're wanting to create a file on your computer, but list will save this one line that you see here. You can also save things as a CSV, which you can then save as an Excel if you want. That will save this view plus basic contact information. So you'll have this plus what is available of email, phone, website, mailing address. It will add those fields to it. So it's a little bit in between the 2 PDF versions. All right, so if we wanted to look at one of these more in detail, you can of course go into them. And I was mentioning that while the database itself is updated continuously, each individual profile is updated on a more sporadic basis. So you can see here, profile was supposed to have last been updated April of this year. Their last bit of grant information came in last month. So that is what the currency looks for this particular profile. And I mentioned again that since this is in Essential, where you're kind of creating a personal account, even if it is occasional access one, you can use their tool to assess a grant maker. You can use that to kind of go through things and save things to a dashboard that you can look at in here. When you're only looking at it 1 day a month, I'm not sure exactly how useful that is or is not for people, but is certainly a way to start kind of organizing that information. And of course, you can also then, export that in some way. So as mentioned on the maps, what they are funding, where it is funding, grant size. You'll see that, this differs pretty much inversely from the one that was in the slideshow presentation, where this foundation tends to give smaller grants, whereas that one was giving grants that were more heavily weighted on this end of the spectrum. So that is definitely something that you can kind of keep in mind when you're looking for, funders that are a good fit for you. You can see they have kind of a wide variety of shadings of states, though Illinois is still by far the darkest, which means that they do focus on the state. You can see all of their various funding interests. These are all of the terms from the database that are used for all of their grants. So all of these pop up at least once on things that are indexed for them. Their purpose, what they say their mission is. Other funders to consider, if you've done a search and you've only gotten a couple of results, but they were pretty good fits, looking at this box can have suggestions from the database's algorithm on other organizations that do similar work overall. So it might have just been that there was some quirk of the exact search done where they didn't pop up if they're not already in your results. So you can always kind of check them out if you were looking for kind of, more results that were similar to the one you're currently looking at. Applications section, so you can see here again what information they have. They're giving limitations. They mentioned that they give primarily around Chicago and that they do not give grants outside the continental United States. So poor luck for anyone in Alaska or Hawaii, I suppose. You can look at 990s from here if you wanted to download them from here. Again, you contact us, the who's who on who's related. And then at the very bottom, a little bit more contact information. Like this didn't list a website up at the top, but however, down here, we have a phone number, we have a mailing address, and other kinds of information about where the organization is located. All right, so these you can save one at a time. If you want to save particular profiles, you can download them as a PDF. If you're working somewhere where you can't download something directly to the machine you're working on, you can also email things to yourself. That is something I focus on more heavily when I'm talking about people who are going to be visiting us. But you can do that from each individual profile, or you can also do it from the longer list of results, which I'm hoping will load since I hit the back button here for just a moment. Yeah, if you're working somewhere where you cannot save results directly to the machine or a flash drive, then you can email them to yourself as attachments. All right, and that is basically all the information I really have about this. Did anyone have any kind of final thoughts or questions? Stop the share. And since there are, not that many of us, you can also feel free to just unmute yourself and tell us about it out loud if you wish. All right. Well, if no one has any questions, we've all been at X. There we go. So no, it's not that the link's only good for 1 month. It's that you can only log in once a month. So once you log in and create your account, you will get a little 24-hour countdown timer. Once that time's out, it'll be 30 days. Then you can use that link again, the initial link we send you, and log in using the information you already created to get your next day. And it's just that you can only do it once a month. You don't have to email us every month for a link. That would be very irritating, I feel for you. Not that limited access doesn't present its own issues, but at least it's not that one. Right, so I will send out the slides to all attendees to make sure people have those. I will probably also try to remember to include the couple of links I tossed into the chat just to make sure people have those as well. But if nobody has any further comments or questions, I'd let you have, 5 minutes back of your day. Right. Thank you all very much.